All right. So our third key reason or origin behind World War I is nationalism. This one's a little more complicated, and I need you to really pay attention in this video and be able to describe nationalism and how it comes into play in the causes of World War I by the end of this video. So nationalism is this idea that a people that share a common language, history, culture, etc., will want their own government, will want to rule themselves. And the old way of doing things had just been like, a king, whoever's the strongest, got to control people. Didn't matter if they spoke a different language or anything like that. It's just whoever had the power had the control. The idea of nationalism is these groups of individuals or these groups of people coming together and saying, no, we have a common heritage, a common culture, common language. We should control ourselves. This idea of self-determination is going to play a major role in why World War I develops. And we have to kind of cover two pieces of it. First, let's take a look at what happens with Germany and Austria-Hungary leading up to World War I. And it really actually starts with Prussia versus Austria. You may have heard of the term Prussia before. It's not Russia, and somebody accidentally put a P on the front. It is the name for one of the German states. And you have to understand that if you look at a map of Europe, there are a lot of German-speaking peoples all throughout Central Europe. And that's because these Germanic tribes that moved way back even during the Middle Ages into this central part of Europe, they eventually settled down and become a bunch of little kingdoms. Throughout the Middle Ages, there was just a ton of little tiny kingdoms all throughout this area. And occasionally they were united under something called the Holy Roman Empire. But understand that there's these smaller German kingdoms everywhere. And there had been a movement during the 1800s to unify these German-speaking peoples. And Prussia was kind of the leader for unifying Germany. Its major opponent to unifying Germany was Austria. Austria, also German speaking, and it had several allies down here around Austria. Prussia had its allies as well, if you check out some other maps down here. But eventually, just understand this, eventually, um, a guy named Otto von Bismarck, and again, lots of guys with some very full mustaches here. Otto von Bismarck, and you should probably know this guy. As far as Germany goes, he's like the George Washington of Germany, like the father of the country. You might even have the capital of North Dakota, where a lot of Germans settled, might be named after Mr. Bismarck here. Well, anyway, Otto von Bismarck found a way to unify the country, really actually by starting a war. And it got Germany, at least Prussia, to unify many of these northern German kingdoms. Doesn't unify the whole thing. The southern German states stay under Austrian rule. But anyway, what you need to get is that by 1870, Germany is able to be united under Prussian rule, under Otto von Bismarck's rule. And one of the things they do is they turn their attention to France. And there's this area right down here, right on the border of these two territories, where a lot of people are German speaking, and it's called the Alsace-Lorraine. Germany then goes to war against France to take and ends up taking this territory. That's going to be a major point of contention because France wants it back. And so Germany and France in the 1870s, they go to war over this. They become enemies because of this territory. Germany wins and they take the Alsace-Lorraine. Another area that you really have to pay attention to is this Balkans region. And the Austria-Hungary Empire, it was not one of the stronger empires in Europe. And remember, they do not have a lot of territory overseas. And part of the reason is they're just trying to maintain their own empire here at home. They don't want to lose any more territory. The Ottoman Empire, if you recall, I told you was called the sick man of Europe because they were losing territory. And especially, they went to war against Russia in 1878, 1879, And Russia ends up taking basically these territories from them. Many of these territories become independent countries. So you'll notice the little dates here: 1878, 1908. You'll notice actually Austria annexes Bosnia Herzegovina here in 1908, 1909. That is key to understanding the whole conflict. Serbia, which is made up of mostly Slavic peoples, believes that all of these areas, since a lot of Slavic speaking peoples live there, should be all under one country called Yugoslavia. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but just understand that these countries or these areas have broken off because of this idea of nationalism. Um, and a bunch of these areas desired autonomy, desired to, hey, let's take a vote, whatever the people decide, that's which country they're going to be a part of. Notice there's Russia and the Ottoman Empire are enemies, and also Russia and Austria-Hungary now, because they are competing over these territories, wanting influence. Russia, not really strong enough to actually come in and dominate these countries. So they've got their whole big empire to worry about. But they definitely don't want Austria-Hungary to have more of these territories down here either, especially since a lot of them are Slavic, and Russia is more of a Slavic country as well, where Austria-Hungary is more of a Germanic-speaking empire. So understand that there's these issues going on in the Balkans. The Balkan Peninsula is the powder keg of Europe. That's maybe a good term to know. This powder keg is, there is the potential for this thing to blow up and turn into a major war. And of course it will. So this is another major reason behind World War I is these nationalistic tendencies, because when you want your group of people to be united under one government, that means somebody else is going to lose control. And if they don't want to lose control and you want control, that's going to lead to conflict. And sure enough, it's going to happen.